こんにちは。カルロスコーディネーター .com のカルロスです。I know many of you are already fluent in Japanese and speak it very, very well. But it is true that for reading comprehension, especially of highly specialized texts, for instance the ones in N1, are kind of hard to understand, especially in the very beginning of language acquisition. So today, I'm going to be showing you guys how we should be tackling N1 texts. This is the methodology that we currently use with our online Japanese classes at carloscoordinator.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks.
The first thing we're going to be doing is reading the text out loud to see if we're able to comprehend the kanji and the whole flow of the text. かつて私たちを規制したのは国家思想とか家の家父長制度というようなはっきりと目に見える権力とか規制やモラルであったが、今私たちを支配しているのはそのようなはっきりと目に見えるものではない。個人主義という美名の裏で情報という見えざる手が大きな手を広げているのである。情報が電波に乗り活字に現れ、それによって私たちは動かされている。そして自分がどこまで動かされているのかすら自分で確かめられないほどである。だとすると、現代ほど自分の主体性、価値観を築き上げるのに難しい時代はないのである。
Now let's go a little bit through self-analysis. Were you able to comprehend the vocabulary and the kanji that was in the text? Can you clearly see the parts that the text has? And the most important thing, do you understand the point of the author? If you still think you're missing some words, let's go ahead and look them up together.
かつて、規制、規制する、家父長、権力、支配、支配する、個人主義、美名、裏、見えざる手、電波、活字、主体性、価値観。
The third thing we're going to be doing is analyzing the text itself. Are you able to see the two parts that the text has? In the first part, what is the author comparing? In the first part, the author is comparing the past, かつて, with the now, 今. In the second part of the text, the author explains a little more on what is happening exactly in the present. When a text is a little hard to understand in Japanese, the best way we can deal with it is translating it to our native tongue. In order to do this, we're going to be finding commas and periods to divide the sentences. Remember that the sentence in Japanese always starts with the wa and the ga and finishes with a verb. We're going to be translating the wa or ga part before, and then we're going to go towards the verb. But be careful with grammar points that might alter this. So we're actually going to be going directly with the text to see how this method works. First of all, the subjects that we have here are verbs. So in English, when translating, we should add a what, as in, what controlled us in the past. Also, the verb in the first sentence is deatta, so the old form of des, not the verb arimasu. We could translate the first sentence like, what controlled us in the past was morals and or restrictions and or authority that we could clearly see with our eyes, like the system of domestic patriarchy or the way of thought of the actual country. Then the text goes with a ga, meaning a but. So we would say, but what is dominating us now is not something that we can clearly see with our eyes. When we're reading a text, either in English or Japanese or any other language, we tend to think in advance and things like, oh, the author is going to be saying this after that. Let's not fall into this trap, because with very, specific or very specialized texts, the author might not be meaning what you think it meant in the beginning. This next sentence has a very long connector that we can translate something along the lines of, hidden under the beautiful name of individualism, the invisible hand, called information, is spreading its big hands. The author uses no de aru, which in regular speaking would say something like des or nano, in order to convey that this is the actual thing, his actual opinion. So we can translate it something like actually, that is. The second sentence uses a passive form, a verb in the passive form, even though ugokasu means to move, as in I move something. Ugokasareteiru means to be moved. Something is being moved. So how could we translate this? Information rides electromagnetic waves, shows imprint, and because of that, or through that, is moving us. We are being moved by that. In this case, information. In this last part of the text, we have two grammar points that are going to be altering the way we understand the sentences, so we cannot translate them directly. We have to have specific grammar classes or acquire these grammar points before. The first one, sura, hodo, and the second one, hodo wanai, are embedded in the text in this way. We can translate them something like, we're not even able to understand to what extent we are being moved. If this is so, there is no harder era than today in order to build up our own values and subjectivity. As you probably know, the particle hodo is used in several grammar expressions. This last sentence has a no de aru, which expresses the actual idea, the actual intention behind the text. This is why the author wrote this for. Now that we fully comprehend the text, let's see what the point of the author is. Let's read the possible answers. 1. 今は昔に比べて規制の少ない個人主義の社会であるから、主体性や自分の価値観を持つことは容易になっている。2. 今は権力やモラルに代わって情報に支配されるようになり、かえって主体性や独自の価値観を持ちにくくなった。3. 我々は社会にあふれる情報に動かされずに、自分自身にとって本当に価値のあるものを主体的に選ぶべきである。我々は目に見える権力や規制に支配されないように、自分の主体性や価値観をしっかりと築き上げるべきである。Now we're going to be finding red flags within the answer options to see which one is the correct one. The first possible answer says, now, compared to the past, we are a society, an individualist society with few restrictions. And because of that, it is easy now to have our own values and subjectivity. Well, we know this is wrong, and both sentences are wrong, because the first one says that we live in a society with few restrictions. But we know this is not true. It's not that we have fewer restrictions, it's just the restrictions have changed. And the second part of the answer is wrong too, because we know it's not easy for us. In fact, it's the total opposite. Now it's the hardest time that we could ever have to actually have our own values. The third and the fourth option are the easier to check out, because we know that the text says nothing on what we should be doing. So when we see a beki, erabu beki, we should choose. Kizuki ageru beki, we should build up. We know that this is not going to be right, because the author's point wasn't to make us do anything. He was just describing something. That's why we finally get to the second answer. So we know that one is the correct. That is the correct one, and that's that we can translate along the lines of, Now, instead of morals or authority, we are being controlled by information. And because of that, it is harder to have our own values and our own subjectivity. We know now that that is the point of the text.